Hello? Can anyone hear me? Is anyone picking this up? This is a distress signal. Please, whatever you do, don't save us.
This broadcast baffled all of us. To clarify, I work at a radio tower on the eastern coast of Norway, and this distress signal came out of nowhere. I know I'll sound delusional, but what I'm telling you now is the truth of what happened. You can believe me or not, but whatever you do, at least see it as a warning. After receiving the broadcast, we immediately tried to locate the source of the signal. It was actually not far off the coastline, which was surprising because we identified the signal as coming from a British Victoria-class submarine used for scientific research by marine biologists. The extraordinary part was that the water is way too shallow in the location of the source for any kind of submarine, especially one of that size. So there's no way that this submarine even got to that location under usual circumstances. All three of us noticed it, but Håvard was the first to suggest to investigate the location for ourselves. Of course, Sven and I immediately protested and wanted to inform the police and the government, even though we were very curious as well. But he replied that they wouldn't believe that a British submarine had somehow made it all the way through the shallow water. Besides, the nature of the distress signal also doesn't really support the story. Oh yeah, I should probably explain who the others are. We are 3 men working at this radio tower. Håvard is a very extroverted, tall Norwegian. I'd say he's in his mid-30s. I haven't been here for long yet, so I don't know for sure. Besides, it's not like it matters here. Meanwhile, Sven is a rather introverted but very bulky and strong Swede. You could often mistake him for a concrete wall, both in robustness and in how talkative he is. Anyway, not knowing any better, Sven and I finally gave in and started to get the boat ready. We have a small motorboat on a little wooden pier next to our radio tower. We also agreed to take a handheld radio with us, in case we would receive another signal from the submarine. Looking back, I really don't know why we just didn't register the last part of the first message. It didn't take long to get to the location of the supposed submarine, but there was nothing. I mean, can never be that easy, can it? Luckily, I remembered that we also brought some old sonar gear that Håvard found on eBay a couple of months back, I think. We might need it one day, he had reasoned. Well, he was right after all. As we were setting it up, we surprisingly received another signal. It sounded so eerie and disturbing, like we were listening to someone dying.
Please, tell my wife I love her. I don't know where we are. Everything is dark. But but it has to be. I think that's it. Dr. Mitchell and Dr. Adams are already gone. So is my crew. Don't let our sacrifice be in vain. Captain Harvey signing out. God save the Queen.
We tried to reach anyone on the other end, but no one answered. We all looked at each other, confused, and not really affirmed in our plan. Right at that moment, Hava got the sonar to work. I believe we just tried to suppress the message we just heard at that point, or we hadn't comprehended it yet. So we scanned the ground, but found nothing. No signs of any kind of submarine, or even any metal, steel parts on the ground. There was just one minor detail I noticed after the sonar scan was complete. Right below us, the scan showed that there was one tiny point where the seafloor was far deeper than the rest. First we thought it might be a glitch on the screen, which of course can happen very often. It was just too much of a coincidence that it was the exact location where the first signal originated from. But it was already getting dark, so we decided to drive out again in the morning and do another scan to see if it was actually a glitch. A part of me really wanted it to be a glitch at this point, because I was starting to be creeped out. I'm sure Havar and Sven were as well, but we didn't stop continuing our plan. God, I wish we had. When we returned the next day, the sonar image, unfortunately, hadn't changed. At least we brought scuba gear with us to check it out, because at this point our curiosity had overpowered the unease we felt before. Sven stayed up on the boat while Hova and I started our descent into the vast ocean below us. And what we found may completely turn modern science on its head. The little dot on the sonar image was actually a tiny hole in the ocean floor. Not in a rock on the ocean floor, in the entire ocean floor. My arm hardly fit in it, but as far as I was able to tell, it was at least a couple of meters deep, if not tens or hundreds of meters. Even when shining a lamp into it, we just couldn't see any kind of end. We relayed the information to Sven, and that we would come up again to think of a new plan. But just at that moment, the hole, or rather, the whole ground just opened up like I can't explain it. Like the ground was alive. Then an unnaturally strong current erupted from within the giant opening, and Havar and I were pulled down into the animalistic stone maw. I came to laying on a wet, sandy floor, blood on my arms and legs where my suit had ripped. I immediately looked for Hava and spotted him laying a couple of meters away from me. His scuba mask was completely shattered. As fast as I could, I ran over to him. But why could I run in the first place? That's when I finally realized that the water was gone. I was able to breathe, even though my oxygen tank was damaged. Then Havar finally came to, so I helped him remove his mask and clean up the blood. The mask's glass had cut his face in multiple places, but luckily, as far as I could see, they weren't very deep, and his eyes weren't damaged. We looked up to see where we came from. There was a giant crater about 10 meters above us. It kind of looked like a funnel, but we couldn't see the end. The area we were in looked like a massive, dark cave made out of the same weird-looking stone. At least our lamp survived, which gave us about 30 meters of vision. Which wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. But what were we supposed to do now? Our only choice of action was to just explore the cave and hope to find a way out, if one actually existed. We were walking further and further into the unknown, while trying to make sense of everything that just happened. After walking for what felt like hours, we spotted a large object in the distance. We approached it with caution, trying to identify what was laying in front of us. It actually was the submarine. So I was also dragged down into this strange place. What kind of massive power do these currents have? At this point, what were we supposed to do now, other than board the submarine? There was no going back now, figuratively and literally. Getting in was quite easy to our surprise. The hatch wasn't properly closed, so we were able to lift it up without much effort. The red emergency light was still switched on and immersed the inside of the submarine in a bloody tone, as if we were standing in the belly of a whale carcass. The peculiar odor that filled the air did not help. I recognized that stench. It's a one-of-a-kind smell. The smell of death. Fourth Horseman's frightening fragrance fills every space it reaches with sorrow and grief. I immediately armed myself with the first thing I could find, a broken steel pipe. Havar followed right behind me, scavenging a damaged valve off the floor. Now armed, we continued exploring the submarine with caution. Flinching at every faint sound, we made our way further and further into the bloody belly of the submarine. What the hell happened here? We asked ourselves while finding more and more traces of destruction. From more damaged pipes and valves to metal doors laying on the floor with broken hinges, seemingly the result of forced entry. There was also a lot of oil spilled everywhere. No, not oil. That's blood. Almost everything was splattered with half-dried blood. A destroyed British submarine off the Norwegian coast sucked down into a giant cave below the ocean floor and completely drenched in blood as the cherry on top. Reality just felt broken, while basically having an existential crisis. I noticed something moving in my peripherals. I immediately raised my pipe in defense, but what I saw will never leave my mind. There was a man lying under a control panel in the corner of the room, or rather half of a man. He had been brutally ripped in two by his torso, organs hanging out, and blood everywhere. I almost threw up everywhere, but was able to hold myself together. I inspected the dead body. The badge said Captain Harvey. So that was the man that sent the distress signal. Well, I guess he didn't quite survive. But in turn, I realized that everything was quiet. So where was Hova? I frantically looked around for him, but he was nowhere to be seen. He had just vanished without a trace. I ran without any care, searching for him. Where did he go? What happened? What was that sound? A terrifying scream reverberated through the submarine. I immediately ran in the direction of the scream, but the last room I entered at the back of the submarine. God, I still have nightmares about it. There was Havar, pinned to the wall by some sticky black substance, and his legs are gone. They have been brutally ripped out. The whole room was drenched in blood as well, and there were multiple limbs, heads, and other ripped apart body parts scattered around the room. Havar was either passed out or already dead as well. Still, I rushed over to him, trying to get the gooey substance off him. No pulse. Shit. But I didn't have time to mourn his death. because whatever did that to him was probably still lurking somewhere on the submarine. I got him free to get his oxygen tank. If there was any chance of getting out of here, I needed to breathe. I was changing the oxygen tanks when I spotted some of the black substance forming around Havar's lips. Then suddenly, the substance shot out of his mouth, knocking me against the wall. As I screamed out in pain, it started to mutate into a wolf-sized beast beyond my imagination. I still can't describe it. It's nothing I've ever seen before. Some sort of flexible biomass with millions of teeth or claws rotating around its body, like giant sentient rotating saw blades on continuously changing and morphing skin. All over its body, seemingly wherever was space, there were countless ever-changing eyes that would also move freely around its whole body, intertwined with the saw blades. The only thing that resembled a head was a massive opening in the front of the nightmarish creature, filled with tentacle-like appendages. I got my pipe up just in time as it charged at me with full speed, using itself as a weapon. It was abnormally strong, and I knew I couldn't win any battle of strength, so I twisted the pipe, wounding the creature with the sharp broken off end. But before I could do actual damage, it gripped the pipe with its tentacles, ripping it out of my hands and throwing it towards the other side of the room. It continued to throw itself in my direction, which I narrowly avoided. That's when I felt the wall behind me. That was it then. Brutally mutilated by an unknown hell creature in a submarine, possibly kilometers below the seafloor. It jumped at me, pushing its claws into my shoulders and strangling me with its tentacles. Then, a horrifyingly loud noise erupted from within the creature, almost bursting my eardrums. But it wasn't a scream of victory, but rather a scream of pain. As fast as it had gripped me, it got off me and turned around. There I saw Havar, sitting on the ground, smiling at me with a painful grin. He nodded, and I understood. As I started to run, I saw the creature lunging at him, pipe stuck in its back. It gripped his head with its tentacles and proceeded to tear his abdominal region to shreds, completely sewing him in half. Now, his blood had joined the other damage of this vicious place. I found my way through the destroyed submarine, almost tripping over every broken pipe and valve. My only thought was to just get out of here. Luckily, we had left the hatch open, so I got out fairly easily, smashing it closed after getting out. There was just one problem. We still hadn't found a way out of this place before we entered the submarine. But when I heard the creature banging against the hatch, my fight or flight instinct kicked in, and I just ran. I ran into the darkness, into the unknown, because the other option meant certain death. At every moment, I expected the creature to grab me from behind and brutally maul me like it did Havar. Suddenly, a large and powerful stream of water erupted under my feet, propelling me into the air. I thought I'd get crushed by the ceiling when it opened up within the fraction of a second. I was pushed through a multiple kilometer long stone tunnel, and as fast as the eruption started, I was in the ocean again. I swam up as fast as I could. I had other things in mind than decompression sickness. I just wanted to get as far away from the seafloor as possible. When I finally managed to reach the surface, I spotted our boat in the distance. But when I swam over, I noticed that Sven wasn't on there. It was definitely our boat. The sonar and radio equipment were still on board, but not Sven. He had just vanished. As I'm typing this, I'm back at the radio tower, trying to comprehend everything that happened. What the hell was that place? And the strange creature? I'm debating whether or not I should go to the police now. But they won't believe any of this. Why should they? They'll only assume that I murdered Var and Sven. I guess I just stay at the tower for now.